Hello friends, thank you for joining me today. I'm going to do a quick lesson on drawing trees. First, let me take a minute to tell you where I am. I'm in the mountains of North Carolina, near Wilkesboro, miles away from any place. Perfect time to draw a tree, especially that one right there. And hey, this gives me a great opportunity to show to some of you my world's simplest sketching kit. You have to get one of those sketchbooks that has the spiral binding, right? Take a kneaded eraser, stuff it in each end, and that gives you a little compartment. So in this particular sketchbook, I just have two pencils, a fat, here let me show you. So the lead is this big, and this is just the lead holder, 4B, and this is a plain old mechanical pencil. So those two, kneaded eraser in the other end. See, that's a neat little compartment. Some of you will notice, first of all, the way that I'm holding the pencil. And many of you are going to say, golly. Trust me, that's the word. Say, golly, just like that. You're going to say, that's weird. I never hold a pencil that way. And I say, as the teacher, I know you don't. You hold it like this. Believe me, I held it that way most of my life as well. Even after art professors in college tried to tell me otherwise, it took me a long time to figure out that they actually were right and why. But I don't want to get off on that today. I talk about that often enough. Suffice it to say that it creates a more fluid and looser line, and some of you are going to disagree with me about that, and that's all right. I'm not going to get into that argument today. So there's a very quick outline of the trunk, or the trunks, I should probably say, the trunks and the major branches, major boughs of this tree. Now I'm going to real quickly sketch in some foliage where it exists up there. Okay, and let's talk about trees. Now I'm going to be doing, I would guess by the time I'm done, I will have somewhere between 15 and 20 different lessons on how to draw trees. Anybody want to say Yahoo? Or somebody want to say, oh my. So what I'm going to talk about today is not necessarily the first place to start when talking about how to draw trees. Do you understand? It's partly because I'm looking at a tree while I'm drawing this. So that is creating, of course, some parameters for this particular lesson. But let me give you, well, I'm going to start where this particular tree really leads us. And it's this. If you want your trees to be believable, don't draw ordinary trees. What do I mean by that? Well, here, let me turn a page back here to this page, part of this logo page that I'm not going to use for anything else. First of all, there's a 6-year-old tree. There's a 7 or 8-year-old tree. And here is an adult tree. And that is the kind of a tree an adult would draw. So this is age 8, this is age 10, this is age 30. Now, okay, that's an evergreen. I shouldn't have done, that wasn't the point. Let me draw another one. So here's a deciduous, small-ish deciduous tree, okay? It's not bad for, a simple profile of a tree. But what might be wrong with that is that it's a cliche. It's an ordinary, predictable, boring. It's the kind of tree that you might see in a arborist if I got the right word, people who plant trees, or a person who loves plants. What are they called? Tree hugger. No, that's not what I'm after. It's symmetrical, it's simple, it's easy. All right, so one of the things I want to point out, and this particular tree really aids us a great deal in this ambition, and that is draw always. Of course, every always has an exception. You know that. But draw a tree that has character. Don't draw what I would, again, call predictable trees. Hey, let me take just a minute and point you at the tree that I'm drawing right now. Ready? So there it is. Do you see those bare branches? There are more bare branches than leafy branches on that tree. That's an unusual and an interesting tree. Do you see? That's not a cliche. Now, of course, that won't fit in every single drawing or painting that you're doing, but to some degree, in every painting or drawing, you want to pick a tree that doesn't look like it came straight out of a tree identification book. Let me just be quiet for a minute and draw in fast motion so that I can get this tree finished. All right, let me stop there. That's maybe 15 minutes of work in real time, and it's a fairly interesting looking tree. Let me take just a minute to describe some of the issues that I'm trying to demonstrate in this particular drawing. Now, some of these things will come up many, many times in the course of our tree study. I already mentioned draw an unconventional tree. Secondly, one of the most difficult things to accomplish in drawing a tree is dimensionality. I mean, look at that tree. There's probably about 20 feet from the closest branches to the farthest branches. In other words, the tree is actually deep both directions. And here we are drawing on a flat surface. How do we indicate dimensionality? Let me give you one of the tricks. Now let me give you two of the tricks. One is using light and shadow. So in this tree, the sun is coming from the left, so and above. So for instance, here's a bunch of foliage, and here's the trunk underneath that foliage in the shade of those leaves. Does that make sense? That's happening here and there and everywhere. This branch is dark because it's in the shadow of the trunk. So one of the things you want to try to do is use light to indicate that some branches are near and some are far. Secondly, you want to make sure that your branches, twigs, boughs, major trunks of the tree, that they overlap. Let me draw another bad tree here real quickly. Here's what I mean. Here's a trunk, branch. Okay, you've all drawn trees like this and seen trees like this. In other words, it's as if there was a tree and somebody took a steamroller and flattened it all out. And one of the problems is that not enough of these lines overlap with it like I'm doing now. They need to overlap with each other. That indicates that some are behind and some are in front, especially if you can indicate which is in front. Like for instance, and I know this is really small, this branch right here goes up, turns back down, comes and goes underneath this larger, closer branch. I'm going to make this one a little clearer just so that that's a little bit obvious. Does that make sense? You see this branch going behind that one? Again, this one is behind that one. Well, that adds dimensionality. You might have noticed that I picked up an eraser a couple times and I erased a couple light lines in these leafy areas indicating branches that are in front of. Well, here's a big trunk that's in front of the foliage, but this foliage is in front of this trunk. Does that make sense? So some, again, in a case like this where you have leaves on the tree, some of the leaves are in front of the branches and some are in back. So again, that gives dimensionality. Two more things. One of the things that is the biggest mistake, in fact, I would call this the biggest mistake that people make when they're drawing, especially a bare tree, and this is a half bare tree, is they don't have nearly enough twigs and branches. I mean, there are typically thousands of little tiny feathery, skinny branches at the end of a major limb, at the end of a bare tree. Okay, so watch that. Then the last thing I'll mention, the last little tip here, is that whenever you're drawing, and this just does not pertain to trees, but it certainly includes trees. Whenever you're drawing a long, skinny shape, like especially here in the trunk, let me turn the page again and do a little diagram here. Whenever you're drawing a long, skinny object, so here's the shape of the object, try most of the time to make your hand and your marks go across that object. And in other words, don't make most of your lines go this way. Now there are some kinds of trees that would be appropriate because that's the bark, but even there I would be going back and forth a little bit. But you see that I did that quite a bit on this tree trunk. There's all kinds of marks that don't go this way but go this way, and generally speaking you want to resist the temptation to move your hand this way when you're drawing a long skinny shape, and you want to try to make your hand move back and forth as much as is practical. And I may have overdone it in here just to make the point, but that's what I was doing to make the point. All right? So there's a few quick tips from the mountains of North Carolina about how to draw a tree. There will be lots more coming when I launch into, are you ready for the outro? Da 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 da. Landscape Masters. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.